Welcome back. It's now time to go in depth. The Atlantic hurricane season started on Saturday, June 1, and for Caribbean citizens, these hot summer months bring with it the constant worry of a hurricane. Will a storm hit our country this year? Now, on the phone to discuss these and other pressing matters is Evan Thompson. He's the manager of the weather branch at Jamaica's Meteorological Service. We also hope to be joined by another guest later on during this program. Welcome, Evan.
Hi, good evening.
Now, what are the predictions for this year, first of all?
Well, we are expecting that this year we will have an active hurricane season. It is likely that it will be more active than normal. Whereas in a normal year, we experience around about 6 hurricanes developing in the Atlantic basin, which includes the Atlantic Ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, and the Caribbean Sea. This year, we're expecting that it could be anywhere between 7 and 11 hurricanes that we experience. So we do expect that we will have more systems developing than normal. We could also, apart from the hurricanes, we could have tropical storms developing that may not intensify as far as becoming hurricanes. And we could have anywhere between 13 and 20 of these tropical storms.
Now, for the past few years, actually, we've been seeing these above-average seasons, these above-average hurricane seasons, a lot of activity in the Atlantic basin. Yes. Why is that? What's causing that?
Well, what's causing them to remain in the Atlantic, or what's causing it to be active?
What's causing it to be above average?
Oh, well, the climatic conditions seem to be set up in such a way that we are having a number of years of more active than normal seasons. This really is a trend that has developed where we notice that over the region we have a period of very active seasons followed by periods of very inactive seasons. And since the year 1995, we've been experiencing quite a bit of activity that is above normal, and that has continued. I mean, of course, 1 or 2 years within that period between then and now have been slightly less active than the norm. But overall, we've been having very active seasons all the way from 95 until now. The patterns remain in the same positions that would encourage that to continue happening.
So what you're suggesting is that it's cyclical in nature. We have these couple of decades of high activity followed by a couple of decades of low activity. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct.
Well, because some scientists believe it is climate change. Where does that fall in?
Well, the climate change is also, we believe, playing a role in that we are seeing some systems that are much more intense than we have experienced in the past. In the most recent years, we've also experienced temperatures that are higher than the norm. We are experiencing hurricanes that are lasting for longer periods, and that is exactly what is expected with in a climate change scenario with global warming. So we are seeing some things that would suggest that what was expected with climate change is actually playing out now with regard to the hurricane season. We're having more intense systems, more frequent development, and also systems that remain for a longer time.
Like Superstorm Sandy last year.
That's right. We would not normally see that kind of a scenario develop at that time of the year, at the end of October, finding these tropical storms and then it merging with this other system coming in from the northwest. And so this kind of pattern and other patterns that we're seeing right across the globe are suggesting that some changes are really taking place, and maybe not for the good. Some of them are not really looking at making things better for us at all.
Now, have there been any signs of early activity in the Atlantic this year? I know the Pacific is already warming up.
Well, we are already seeing some kind of development taking place in the Western Caribbean. We saw some amount of rainfall developing just west of Jamaica. Much of that has drifted toward the north, and it's now moved into the Gulf of Mexico. And conditions are now favorable for that to develop into a tropical depression or a tropical storm within the next 48 hours. So we are already seeing some development taking place. This is in the Atlantic area, but previous to that or earlier than that, we did experience some activity also in the Pacific with 1 hurricane already developing and affecting Mexico.
Now we're pleased to be joined by Dr. Ulric Trotz. Dr. Trotz is the Deputy Director and Science Advisor for the Caribbean Climate Change Center. Welcome, Dr. Trotz. Are you there?
Thank you.
Okay, so we've been talking about this year's Atlantic hurricane season and some of the predictions for what is likely to happen this year. And I was asking our other guest, who is Evan Thompson from the Jamaica Meteorological Service, what's causing these few years of intense activity in the Atlantic?
Yeah, well, it's projected that this year will be an active year, and it has to do with the ENSO cycle from El Nino to La Niña. We are now entering a La Niña phase, and that usually is bad news as far as hurricane activity is concerned for the Caribbean.
What does that mean, La Niña?
The projections are that we would have a more active season with the likelihood of landfall of one or two very strong hurricanes. But that's just the projection.
Mm-hmm. What does La Niña mean? Is that the situation where the warming of the sea?
No, well, there's this cycle of warming in the Pacific, which is El Nino. Last year was a typical El Nino year. And you notice that the hurricane activity in the Caribbean itself was not that drastic. Although at the end of the El Nino, we had the hurricane going up the east coast of the States, and the result was Sandy. Now, this is a regular cycle, and it has nothing to do really with climate change. It has been there from time immemorial and has this tremendous impact on the hurricane activity in the Caribbean. Now, we've come out of that warming phase, and we are now in the La Niña cycle, in which we should see a wetter Caribbean during this season, but also we expect, as the forecasters have shown, much more active hurricane season.
And I know it's very early in the season. I mean, we're just 3 days in, but can the science give us any indication this soon of where the likely hot spots will be this year?
Well, all they can give you really are probabilities. There are so many uncertainties tied up with the projections that it's very difficult until basically the hurricane forms. And even when it forms, you notice the different tracks, probable tracks that the forecasters usually outline. They can only say basically that they expect a couple of them to make landfall, but at this point in time, no. There's no way in saying sort of where that will happen.
Now, going back to you, Evan, the Met Service, you still there? You still with us?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, good. So the Met Service works very closely with the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management and other government agencies. What can people be doing at this time? Because it's so early, we haven't really seen any major storms coming out, just some rain. What can we be doing to prepare now?
Well, at this time, we should have put in place all the things that would, some of the major things, like making sure that our structures are sound in terms of like hurricane straps and things like that, making sure that lumber is available so that we are able to batten down any areas that we may need to start trimming some of the trees, cleaning some of the drains, things like those that would help us to divert any chance of any disaster occurring. However, there are also some things that we need to do personally in terms of making sure that we are aware of whatever kind of hurricane plans we have in place for how we will evacuate any areas or how we will deal with the eventuality of being threatened by any tropical storm or hurricane. We need to make sure we have certain canned foodstuffs in place, batteries, things like those that would make life easier for us if at all we are hit by a hurricane and we lose many of the services that we currently are experiencing or enjoying.
Very useful information. Well, on that point, I want to thank you both for joining us. That's Dr. Ulric Trotz from the Caribbean Climate Change Center and Evan Thompson from the Meteorological Service in Jamaica.
You're
That's
welcome.
it for In Depth. Stay tuned after the break. I'll be back with sports.